Good evening to the Bible Hour. Good evening to the Bible Hour gang. Good evening if you're new to Bible Hour or the Bible Hour. Good evening. We read the Bible for an hour every night, unless the Lord comes again or Sky cut my internet. We'll be here. Good evening, Park End Church admin. Welcome to the Bible Hour. We've reached the book of Kings. Tonight we start reading at 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 28. Phil Tamlin, stream sponsor, has arrived. And what admin have we got tonight? He's using commas, so I have an idea. MC Ricky Bad Boy B123 ABC, welcome on in. The colors of the set have changed again. Who knows why? I don't know. I don't do anything differently. And today, because even yesterday the mic was cackling a bit, I have put the mic in the USB on this slot and the camera on the USB on this slot. And maybe if they're not both in those slots on that side, there won't be cackling, because maybe they just don't like being close to each other. So we've spread them out. We have 4 minutes before we begin reading the word of the Lord. Good evening, Sue Roberts. Welcome on in. I hope you've had a good day. We remain in the narrative books. Paula Barrett, hello Owen and everyone. Thank you, Paula Barrett, for your hard work on the church magazine this week. Diane, hi everybody. How can it possibly be day 42? I know what you mean. Productive day for Sue Roberts. Good. Let's just tilt this slightly, shall we? There we go. Chris Henry in the house. Chris Henry, note how the lighting of the room has changed again, inexplicably. In 4 minutes, we will begin 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 28. 8 days to the end, says Sue Roberts. Or does she mean 18? I think she does. But even then. Good morning, North Star. All the way from Zeeland Newydd. Welcome to the Bible Hour. If you are new, we just read the Bible. We keep it simple. We read the Bible and we ask the questions that the Bible wants us to ask of the Bible when we read the Bible. And from there's about 8 questions that the Bible asks us to ask itself. I've got all the references to all the questions if you ever want them. But we've just taken the 2 big ones. What do we learn about Jesus? What do we learn about church? Yeah, I know what you mean, Chris Henry. I know what you mean. They are working, Sue Roberts, and not only that, I find them a pleasurable sweet just to eat anyway. So They function well on multiple levels. Two minutes. Yeah, I know you mustn't have too many. I know. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. British time, we will be having our church service online. Well, Glynis Webb is in the house. Get the red carpet on. G&A. Yeesh. Man, I wish I'd done my research now. The pressure is on. To what do we owe the pressure? Case can be made, I've heard it made, that Andy Webb is the best elder at Park End Church. I've heard that made. It was solid. Phil Townend, Kerry has crackers and cheese ready. It's almost like sort of an Orthodox ceremony, isn't it? Good evening, Petit Bois. Welcome on in. We are in 1 Kings chapter 1. We zoom through the narrative passages. At least we do in theory, but I still manage to gibber on. And we remind ourselves. Hold on. Sorry about that, Mike. We remind ourselves that the temple illustrates the heaven and the earth. The ark illustrates the throne and the rule of Jesus. The cherubim illustrate the division caused by sin, and that was sewn onto the temple curtains where man and God could not interact unless there was a middleman, the priest. The picture of Jesus on whose shoulders we ride into the presence of God. The sacrificial system illustrates the sacrifice and great work of the Lord Jesus Christ. And the real King, Jesus, has somewhat been neglected up until this point. Let's see if King Solomon does a better job of representing him. As I just rebuild the set. Okay. All right. Let's go. Not our first time, Glynis Webb. Yeesh, she was silent before. Even more pressure on me. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 28. David makes Solomon king. King David responded, "Call Bathsheba." So she came back in and stood before the king. And the king repeated his vow, "As surely as the Lord lives, who has rescued me from every danger, your son Solomon will be the next king and will sit on my throne this very day, just as I vowed to you before the Lord, the God of Israel." Then Bathsheba bowed with her face to the ground before the king and exclaimed, "May the Lord, my Lord, King David, live forever." Then King David ordered, "Call Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada." When they came into the king's presence, the king said to them, "Take Solomon and my officials down to Gihon's spring. Solomon is to ride on my own mule. There, Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet are to anoint him king over Israel. Blow the ram's horn and shout, 'Long live King Solomon!' Then escort him back here, and he will sit on my throne." He will succeed me as king, for I have appointed him to be ruler over Israel and Judea. Amen. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, replied, May the Lord, the God of my Lord the king, decree that it happen. And may the Lord be with Solomon, as he has been with you, my Lord the king. And may he make Solomon's reign even greater, hopefully with less infidelity, we will see. So Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, and the king's bodyguard took Solomon down to Gihon Spring, with Solomon riding down on King David's mule. There Zadok the priest took the flask of olive oil from the sacred tent, and they anointed Solomon with the oil. Then they sounded the ram's horn, and all the people shouted, Long live King Solomon! And all the people followed Solomon into Jerusalem, playing flutes and shouting for joy. The celebration was so joyous and noisy that the earth shook with the sound. Adonijah and his guests heard the celebrating and shouting just as they were finishing their banquet. When Joab heard the sound of the ram's horn, he asked, What's going on? Why is the city in such an uproar? And while he was still speaking, Jonathan, son of Abiathar the priest, arrived. Come in, Adonijah said to him, for you are a good man. You must have good news. Not at all, Jonathan replied. Our Lord King David had just declared Solomon king. The king sent him down to Gihon Spring with Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, protected by the king's bodyguard. They had him ride on the king's own mule, and Zadok and Nathan have anointed him at Gihon Spring as the new king. They have just returned, and the whole city is celebrating and rejoicing. That's what all the noise is about. What's more, Solomon is now sitting on the royal throne as king. And all the royal officials have gone to King David and congratulated him, saying, May your God make Solomon's fame even greater than your own, and may Solomon's reign be even greater than yours. Then the king bowed his head in worship as he lay in his bed, and he said, Praise the Lord, the God of Israel, who today has chosen a successor to sit on my throne while I am still alive to see it. Then all of Adonijah's guests jumped up in panic from the banquet table and quickly scattered. Adonijah was afraid of Solomon. So he rushed to the sacred tent and grabbed onto the horns of the altar. Word soon reached Solomon that Adonijah had seized the horns of the altar in fear, and that he was pleading, Let King Solomon swear today that he will not kill me. Solomon replied, If he proves himself to be loyal, not a hair on his head will be touched. But if he makes trouble, he will die. So King Solomon summoned Adonijah, and they brought him down from the altar. He came and bowed respectfully before King Solomon, who dismissed him, saying, Go on home. There is the Lord's anointed king, the Christ, the anointed one, that means, showing mercy to an insubordinate, rebellious sinner like me. Samuel, chapter 2. David's final instructions to Solomon. As the time of King David's death approached, he gave this charge to his son Solomon. I am going where everyone on earth must someday go. Take courage and be a man. Observe the requirements of the Lord your God and follow all his ways. Keep the decrees, commands, regulations, and laws written in the law of Moses, so that you will be successful in all you do and wherever you go. If you do this, then the Lord will keep the promise he made to me. He told me, if your descendants live as they should and follow me faithfully with all of their heart and soul, one of them will always sit on the throne of Israel. Who's the great descendant who's always sitting on the throne of Israel? And there is something else. You know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me when he murdered my 2 army commanders, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether? He pretended that it was an act of war, but it was done in a time of peace, staining his belt and sandals with innocent blood. Do with him what you think best, but don't let him grow old and go to his grave in peace. Do you know that quote by Matthew Henry? Ambitious, turbulent spirits commonly prepare death for themselves. Many a head has been lost by catching at a crown. Many turbulent spirits commonly prepare death for themselves. Joab is a turbulent spirit, and he's basically just buried himself, hasn't he, with murderous hate. All godlessness dies eventually, just goes to the place of banishment forever. Also, note there that time isn't a healer, is it? Like, sins have to be atoned for, especially murder. And you can't just wait years and years and years and it'll all just go away. The Lord remembers. And here the Lord's anointed remembers. Daily confession of sin we're to make. Be kind to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead. Make them permanent guests at your table, for they took care of me when I fled from your brother Absalom. And remember Shimei, son of Gera, the man from Bahurim in Benjamin. He cursed me with a terrible curse as I was fleeing from Mahanaim. When he came down to meet me at the Jordan River, I swore by the Lord that I would not kill him. But that oath does not make him innocent. You are a wise man, and you will know how to arrange a bloody death for him. Then David died and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. David had reigned over Israel for 40 years, 7 of them in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. Solomon became king and sat on the throne of David his father, and his kingdom was firmly established. That's got to be one of the best verses ever. If your descendants live as they should and follow me faithfully with all their heart and soul, one of them will always sit on the throne of Israel. And here we are in 2020, and one of the descendants still seated on the throne of Israel. Amazing. Solomon, excuse me. Solomon establishes his rule. One day, Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith, came to see Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. Have you come with peaceful intentions? She asked him. Yes, he said. I come in peace. In fact, I have a favor to ask of you. What is it? She asked. He replied, as you know, the kingdom was rightfully mine. All Israel wanted me to be the next king. Not exactly how I remember it, Ad. But the tables were turned, and the kingdom went to my brother instead, for this is the way the Lord wanted it. So now I have just one favor to ask of you. Please don't turn me down. What is it? She asked. He replied, "Speak to King Solomon on my behalf, for I know he will do anything you request. Ask him to let me marry Abishag, the girl from Shunem." "All right," Bathsheba replied. "I will speak to the king for you." So Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak on Adonijah's behalf. The king rose from his throne to meet her, and he bowed down before her. When he sat down on his throne again, the king ordered that a throne be brought for his mother, and she sat at his right hand. "I have one small request to make of you," she said. "I hope you won't turn me down." "What is it, my mother?" he asked. "You know I won't refuse you." "Then let your brother Adonijah marry Abishag, the girl from Shunem," she replied. "How can you possibly ask me to give Abishag to Adonijah?" King Solomon demanded. "You might as well ask me to give him the kingdom. You know that he is my older brother, and that he has Abiathar the priest and Joab son of Zeruiah on his side." Then King Solomon made a vow before the Lord. "May God strike me and even kill me if Adonijah had not sealed his fate with this request. The Lord has confirmed me and placed me on the throne of my father David. He has established my dynasty, as he promised. So as surely as the Lord lives, Adonijah will die this very day." So King Solomon ordered Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, to execute him, and Adonijah was put to death. Then the king said to Abiathar the priest, "Go back to your home in Anathoth. You deserve to die, but I will not kill you now, because you carried the ark of the sovereign Lord for David my father, and you shared all his hardships." So Solomon deposed Abiathar from his position as priest of the Lord, thereby fulfilling the prophecy the Lord had given at Shiloh concerning the descendants of Eli. Nothing is stopping the throne of the Lord's anointed being established. That's the theme here, isn't it? Nothing stops church from being established under the throne of the Lord. Joab had not joined Absalom's earlier rebellion, but he had joined Adonijah's rebellion. So when Joab heard about Adonijah's death, he ran to the sacred tent of the Lord and grabbed on to the horns of the altar. When this was reported to King Solomon, he sent Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, to execute him. Benaiah went to the sacred tent of the Lord and said to Joab, "The king orders you to come out." But Joab answered, "No, I will die here." So Benaiah returned to the king and told him what Joab had said. "Do as he said," the king replied. "Kill him there beside the altar and bury him. This will remove the guilt of Joab's senseless murders from me and from my father's family. The Lord will repay him for the murders of two men who were more righteous and better than he. For my father knew nothing about the deaths of Abner, son of Ner, commander of the Israel of army, and of Amasa, son of Jether, commander of the army of Judah. May their blood be on Joab and his descendants forever, and may the Lord grant peace forever to David, his descendants, his dynasty, and his throne." So Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, returned to the sacred tent and killed Joab the nutjob. I added that. And he was buried at his home in the wilderness. Then the king appointed Benaiah to command the army in the place of Joab, and he installed Zadok the priest to take the place of Abiathar. All the enemies of the Lord's anointed are being purged here, aren't they? So it'll be like the final great day. The king then sent for Shimei and told him, "Build a house here in Jerusalem and live there. but don't step outside the city to go anywhere else. On the day you so much as cross the Kidron Valley, you will surely die, and your blood will be on your own head." Shimei replied, "Your sentence is fair. I will do whatever my lord the king commands." So Shimei lived in Jerusalem for a long time. But 3 years later, two of Shimei's slaves ran away to King Achish, son of Maacah of Gath. When Shimei learned where they were, he saddled his donkey and went to Gath to search for them. When he found them, he brought them back to Jerusalem. Solomon heard that Shimei had left Jerusalem and gone to Gath and returned. So the king sent Shimei and demanded, "Didn't I make you swear by the Lord and warn you not to go anywhere else, or you would surely die?" And you replied, "The sentence is fair. I will do as you say." "Then why haven't you kept your oath to the Lord and obeyed my command?" He's like a repeated offender, isn't he, against the Lord's anointed? And he was in church and the place of safety, and he left. The king also said to Shimei, "You certainly remember all the wicked things you did to my father David. May the Lord now bring that evil on your own head. But may I, King Solomon, receive the Lord's blessings, and may one of David's descendants always sit on this throne in the presence of the Lord." Then, at the king's command, Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, took Shimei outside and killed him. So the kingdom was now firmly in Solomon's grip. Gotta stay in church. It's the only safe place, especially if you're a repeated sinner. We've got to stay in the safety of the Lord's anointed in church all the days of our lives. We cannot go just wandering off and rejecting again the Lord's anointed. That always ends in disaster. And if we are afar off, let's confess it tonight and come back and plead the sacrifice of Jesus. 1 Kings chapter 3. Park End admin. I know what's in this chapter. Could you please copy and paste in a version of your choice, James chapter 1 verse 5. No, don't paste it yet. Don't paste it yet. Solomon asks for wisdom. Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and married one of his daughters. Remember that generational sin stuff, that if parents don't nip certain behavioral habits in the bud, children often pick up on them? And David had a little bit of a polygamous problem. Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and married one of his daughters. That is the first major problem with Solomon, and I think it's going to get worse. He brought her to live in the city of David until she could finish building his palace and the temple of the Lord and the wall around the city. At that time, the people of Israel sacrificed their offerings at local places of worship, for a temple honoring the name of the Lord had not yet been built. Solomon loved the Lord and followed all the decrees of his father David, except that Solomon too offered sacrifices and burned incense in local places of worship. The most important of these places of worship was at Gibeon. So the king went there and sacrificed 1,000 burnt offerings. That night, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream, and God said, "What do you want? Ask, and I will give it to you." Solomon replied, "You showed great and faithful love to your servant, my father David, because he was honest and true and faithful to you. And you have continued to show this great and faithful love to him today by giving him a son to sit on his throne. Now, O Lord my God, you have made me king instead of my father David, but I am like a little child who doesn't know his way around. And here I am in the midst of your own chosen people, a nation so great and numerous they cannot be counted. Give me an understanding heart so that I can govern your people well and know the difference between right and wrong, because I'm representing Jesus here. For who by himself is able to govern this great people of yours? The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for wisdom. So God replied, because you have asked for wisdom in governing my people with justice, and have not asked for a long life or wealth or the death of your enemies, I will give you what you have asked for. I will give you a wise and understanding heart, such as no one else has had or ever will have. And I will also give you what you did not ask for, riches and fame. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will then be added to you. Please the Lord first. Let him do whatever he wants to do after. Pleasures and that come after seeking the Lord, and he will handle that stuff, if not now, one day in glory forever. But seek ye first the kingdom of God. No other king in all the world will be compared to you for the rest of your life. And if you follow me and obey my decrees and my commands as your father David did, I will give you a long life. Then Solomon woke up and realized it had been a dream. He returned to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the Lord's covenant, where he sacrificed burnt offerings and peace offerings. Then he invited all his officials to a great banquet. Park End admin, could you just post that James verse, pretty please? So before we're going to see an example of Solomon's wisdom, let's check out what the Park End admin have got to say. James 1 verse 5, if you need wisdom, ask our generous Lord and he will give it for you. He will not rebuke you for asking. So all Christians today need wisdom on how to get by in the modern world, on how to be the best church members they possibly can, the best wives, husband, employees, the best lockdown people they can. All church members need to know the ways of the Lord and see the oracles of God and know his mind and trace Jesus in all things. And the Lord's like, just ask me. And so often, especially as church leaders and in our prayer meetings or whatever, there's not enough of asking for the wisdom of the Lord, which often goes against our natural instincts or what we are drawing from our own personal experiences in life. I think the first call, like with Solomon and like with what James has said there, we got to be asking the Lord what he wants, not what we want. And he will give it to us. And here's now an example of Solomon in action. Sometime later, two prostitutes came to the king to have an argument settled. It happens. Please, my lord, one of them began, this woman and I live in the same house. I gave birth to a baby while she was with me in the house. 3 days later, this woman also had a baby. We were alone. There were only two of us in the house. But her baby died during the night when she rolled over on it. Then she got up in the night and took my son from beside me while I was asleep. She laid her dead child in my arms and took mine to sleep beside her. And in the morning, when I tried to nurse my son, he was dead. But when I looked more closely in the morning light, I saw that it wasn't my son at all. Then the other woman interrupted, it certainly was your son, and the living child is mine. No, the first woman said, The living child is mine, and the dead one is yours. And so they argued back and forth before the king. Hasn't church always been involved in really serious nitty-gritty stuff to bring light and hope and joy? And it's funny, just as a quick story, there are builders next door, and we've been chatting a lot about church and why I'm a minister and God and that. And when they swear, they like apologize to me. It's like, oh, which is nice, but I think they do it because they think, because I'm a minister, I have somewhat zero experience with such words or people who commit such words that I cannot even be around them. And it's like, try being part of church for the last decade or like 12 or 13 years. You see everything, and not just that, you have to handle it. I bet I know more swear words than them. Don't quote me on that, Park End elders. Scrap that from the elders meeting notes. Then the king said, let's get the facts straight. Both of you claim the living child is yours, and each says that the dead one belongs to the other. All right, bring me a sword. So a sword was brought to the king. Then he said, cut the living child in two and give half to one woman and half to the other. Then the woman who was the real mother of the living child and who loved him very much cried out, oh no, my lord, give her the child. Please do not kill him. But the other woman said, all right, he will be neither yours nor mine. Divide him between us. Then the king said, do not kill the child, but give him the woman who wants him to live, for she is his mother. When all Israel heard the king's decision, the people were in awe for the king, for they saw the wisdom God had given him for rendering justice. I do think the church in its wisdom, if it has the wisdom of God during lockdown and isn't fretting and is resting in the guidance of Jesus, I do think we'll shine in terms of that sort of wisdom, and we can give real answers to people's questions of hope. It is at the halfway mark. Take 30 seconds, eat some crackers, eat some cheese, take a Rennie, blow your nose, fill up your squash, brush your hair, do whatever, and we'll meet back here in 30 seconds for 1 Kings chapter 4. Some tortilla chips and dip. Nice one, Petit Bois. Yeah, as people are just shuffling in their seats. Another example, there's a lot of drugs in the place I used to live, in the church there. And one carol service, one of the biggest drug dealers of the valley came in. And how can I say this without getting people in trouble who might be watching? But someone who knew the dealer quite well. The dealer came and sat next to my dad because my mum and dad came up for the service. And the dealer sat next to my dad. And like there was a lady in my church going, oh, no, you're sitting next to your dad. That's your poor dad. And I was like, my dad has been a servant in the church for basically his entire life. I'm pretty sure he's come across characters like this before. He's the best person that this person could be chatting to. He's like proper understands people. You see a bit there, don't you, that people are bringing real problems to the life of the church. 1 Kings chapter 4. All right. Let's see a snapshot of the real kingdom which lasts forever. Verse 1. King Solomon now ruled over all Israel, and these were his high officials: Azariah, son of Zadok the priest, Elihoreph and Ahijah, the sons of Shisha, were court secretaries. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahulud, was the royal historian. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was the commander of the army. Zadok and Abiathar were the priests. Azariah, son of Nathan, was in charge of the district governors. Zabud, son of Nathan, a priest, was a trusted advisor to the king. Ahishar was manager of the palace property. Adoniram, son of Abda, was in charge of forced labor. Solomon also had 12 district governors who were all... Oh, those Rennies aren't working, you're right. Solomon also had 12 district governors who were all over Israel. They were responsible for providing food for the king's household. Each of them arranged provisions for 1 month of the year. These are the names of the 12 governors: Ben-Hur in the hill country of Ephraim, Ben-Deker in Makaz, Shalbim, Beth-Shemesh, and Elon-Beth-Hanan, Ben-Hezed in Aruboth, including Succoth and all the land of Hepher, Ben-Abanidab in all of Naphoth Dor. He was married to Taphath, one of Solomon's daughters. Baina, son of Ahilud, in Tanakh and Megiddo, all of Beth-Shan near Zarathan, below Jezreel, and all the territory from Beth-Shan to Abel-Mahololah, and over all Jokmeam. Ben-Geber in Ramoth-Gilead, including the towns of Jair, named for Jair of the tribe of Manasseh, in Gilead, and in the Argob region of Bashan, including 60 large fortified towns with bronze bars on their gates. Ahinadab, son of Ido, in Mahanaim. Ahimaaz in Naphtali. He was married to Basemath, another of Solomon's daughters. Baina, son of Hushai, in Asher and in Aloth. Jehoshaphat, son of Puriah, in Issachar. Shimei, son of Elah, in Benjamin. Geber, son of Uri, in the land of Gilead, including the territories of King Sihon of the Amorites and King Og of Bashan. There was also one governor over the land of Judah. Solomon's prosperity and wisdom. The people of Judah and Israel, by the way, that's one for church structure. Church structure spreading out across the land, all interlocking, intermingling, and reporting back to a hub. When denominations work, they work well. The people of Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand on the seashore. They were contented, with plenty to eat and to drink. Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates River in the north to the land of the Philistines and the border of Egypt in the south. They conquered peoples, for those lands sent tribute money to Solomon and continued to serve him throughout his lifetime. The daily food requirements for Solomon's palace were 150 bushels of choice flour and 300 bushels of meal, also 10 oxen from the fattening pens, 20 pasture-fed cattle, 100 sheep or goats, as well as deer, gazelles, roe deer, and choice poultry. Solomon's dominion extended over all the kingdoms west of the Euphrates River, from Tipsha to Gaza, and there was peace on all his borders. During the lifetime of Solomon, all of Judah and Israel lived in peace and safety. And from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south, each family had its own home and garden. What a picture of the flourishing church. Heaven on earth. People coming across the world to see the Lord's anointed for wisdom and he's just feeding them and they're flourishing in peace. That is the last great day where church and the meek inherit the world. Oh, Park End Church admin, can you cut and paste 1 Corinthians 1:30 and just see if it's the verse that I think it is, which it might not be. Solomon had 4,000 stalls for his chariot horses, and he had 12,000 horses. I'd watch it there, Solomon. The district governors faithfully provided food for King Solomon and his court. Each made sure nothing was lacking during the month assigned to him. They also brought the necessary barley and straw for the royal horses in the stables. God gave Solomon very great wisdom and understanding, and knowledge as vast as the sands of the seashore. In fact, his wisdom exceeded that of all the wise men of the East and the wise men of Egypt. He was wiser than anyone else, including Ethan the Ezrahite and the sons of Malo, Heman, Calcol, and Dada. His fame spread throughout all the surrounding nations. Here it is, Park End admin. God has united you with Christ Jesus for our benefit. God made him to be wisdom itself. Christ made us right with God. He made us pure and holy, and he freed us from sin. Jesus is wisdom. And here we have all of church just flourishing from the Lord's anointed, the Christ, Christo, glory. We can go to him tonight for wisdom and life. Yes. He composed some 3,000 proverbs and wrote 1,005 songs. Don't forget the 5. He could speak with authority about all kinds of plants, from the great cedar of Lebanon to the tiny hyssop that grows from cracks in a wall. He could also speak about animals, birds, small creatures, and fish. And kings from every nation sent their ambassadors to listen to the wisdom of Solomon. Yeesh! Isn't it amazing the more spirit-filled and wise we get? We even care more about the earth. Properly want to know about it. Solomon, tell me more about the cracks in the wall and that little bit of hyssop that grows there. This is great stuff. It is the third. Take 20 seconds as we plow on for the last chapter. Belter. Loved that one, I did. I really like that chapter. That was a picture of the world to come. Doubtless. Christo. No, Cairo. To anoint. There, the anointed one. The Christ. The recipient. Cairo. With the oil of the Spirit. Just giving everyone wisdom, and life is flourishing. Awesome. 1 Kings chapter 5. Preparations for building the temple. King Hiram of Tyre had always been a loyal friend of David. When Hiram learned that David's son Solomon was the new king of Israel, he sent ambassadors to congratulate him. Then Solomon sent this message back to Hiram. When you know that my father David was not able to build a temple to honor the name of the Lord his God because of the many wars waged against him by surrounding nations, he could not build until the Lord gave him victory over all his enemies. But now the Lord my God has given me peace on every side. I have no enemies, and all is well. So I am planning to build a temple to honor the name of the Lord my God, just as he had instructed my father David. For the Lord told him, your son, whom I will place on your throne, will build a temple to honor my name. We looked at this the other day, and actually that's best fulfilled. That was a Christological prophecy that Solomon, when he's not being too Jesus-centered, might start thinking it's about him and then gets disproved, because he's missed out the parts about actually the one that David's looking to here is going to be born way after David dies and like not commit sin and stuff like that. But anyway, for now, therefore, please command the cedars from Lebanon be cut for me. Let my men work alongside yours, and I will pay your men whatever wages you ask. As you know, there is no one among us who can cut timber like you Sidonians. Here's Gentiles going to build the house of God here. Isn't that great? When Hiram received Solomon's message, he was very pleased and said, praise the Lord today for giving David a wise son to be king of a great nation of Israel. Then he sent this reply to Solomon, I have received your message, and I will supply all the cedar and cypress timber you need. My servants will bring the logs from the Lebanon mountains to the Mediterranean Sea and make them into rafts and float them along the coast to whatever place you choose. Then we will break the rafts apart so you can carry the logs away. You can pay me by supplying me with food for my household. Working with the Gentiles. I would like more locals to be doing building projects in Park End, because then they'll get to think it's part of their community. They've been a part of something special. We get to meet them along the way. When we get to clean the black bricks of doom on Park End building, maybe we just get a ton of locals to help us do it. Safety regulations approved and pending, if Chris Cyril's watching. So Hiram supplied as much cedar and cypress timber as Solomon desired. In return, Solomon sent him an annual payment of 100,000 bushels of wheat for his household and 1,100 gallons of pure olive oil. So the Lord gave wisdom to Solomon, just as he had promised. And Hiram and Solomon made a formal alliance of peace. Then King Solomon conscripted a labor force of 30,000 men from all Israel. He sent them to Lebanon in shifts, 10,000 every month, so that each man would be 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of this labor force. Solomon also had 70,000 common laborers, 80,000 quarry workers in the hill country, and 3,600 foremen to supervise the work. At the king's command, they quarried large blocks of high-quality stone and shaped them to make the foundation of the temple. Men from the city of Gibel helped Solomon and Hiram's builders prepare the timber and stone for the temple. Temple building like regulations get listed, I think, twice, don't they, in this book, because it's so important, this event. All right, we are plowing through. Temple is great when it's for Jesus. Not so great when Solomon thinks it's about himself. Temple's great when the stones are laid, remembering that Jesus is the cornerstone and the temple and the foundation and the true temple of which all the Godhead dwells bodily. And, you know, we're to build on that rock. And actually, we're called the temple of God as well, aren't we? Church in 1 Corinthians 3:16. Let's check this one out then. Solomon builds the temple. It was in mid-spring, in the month of Ziv, during the 4th year of Solomon's reign, that he began to construct the temple of the Lord. This was 480 years after the people of Israel were rescued from their slavery in the land of Israel. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 90 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 45 feet high. The entry room at the front of the temple was 30 feet wide, running across the entire width of the temple. It projected onwards 15 feet from the front of the temple. Solomon also made narrow recessed windows throughout the temple. Living Stones was just thinking about that. Go on in, Park End Admin. Can you also chuck in 1 Corinthians 3:16, please? Been working hard tonight, Park Admin. I'm thankful. He built a complex of rooms against the outer walls of the temple, all the way around the sides and rear of the building. The complex was 3 stories high, the bottom floor being 7.5 feet wide, the second floor 9 feet wide, and the top floor 10.5 feet wide. The rooms were connected to the walls of the temple by beams resting on ledges built out from the wall, so the beams were not inserted into the walls themselves. The stones used in the construction of the temple were finished at the quarry, so there was no sound of a hammer, axe, or any other iron tool at the building site. The entrance of the bottom floor was on the south side of the temple. These were winding stairs going up to the second floor and another flight of stairs between the second and third floors. After completing the temple structure, Solomon put in a ceiling made of cedar beams and planks. As already stated, he built a complex of rooms along the sides of the building attached to the temple walls by cedar timbers. Each story of the complex was 7.5 feet high. Park End Admin, 1 Corinthians 3:16. Don't you realize that all of you together are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God lives in you? Isn't that great? And Jesus is the cornerstone of the whole temple, and he's the temple, and he's the rock. Then the Lord gave this message to Solomon: concerning this temple you are building, if you keep my decrees and regulations and obey all my commands, I will fulfill through you the promise that I made to your father David. I will live among the Israelites and will never abandon my people. I will live with them. This is going back to pick up your excrement, because Jesus is walking around the camp and he doesn't want to step in that. The temple's interior. So Solomon finished building the temple. The entire inside from floor to ceiling was paneled with wood. He paneled the walls and ceilings with cedar, and he used planks of cypress for the floors. He partitioned off an inner sanctuary, the most holy place. At the far end of the temple, it was 30 feet deep and was paneled with cedar from floor to ceiling. There's a great website which you can order cardboard temples for the children in church to do, or is it Tabernacle? It's one of the two. And it's like a little, it's got instructions to construct it together. And it brings it home what the temple looked like and how it was all about Jesus. Might be worth ordering a ton of those in for church. We could do it together on a Sunday with the tables out at the front. Petit Bois, when I got saved at 17, I was told that your body is a temple of God. Yep, I'm pretty sure that is in, I'm pretty sure that's a principle as well there. Yeah, and to look after it as best you can. I once heard a tattoo artist say, I get tattoos because if your body is the temple of the Lord, you're supposed to decorate the walls. I'll leave that with you. The main room of the temple outside the most holy place was 60 feet long. Cedar paneling completely covered the stone walls throughout the temple, and the paneling was decorated with carvings of gourds and open flowers. He prepared the inner sanctuary at the far end of the temple, where the Ark of the Lord's Covenant would be placed. This inner sanctuary was 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 30 feet high. He overlaid the inside with solid gold. He also overlaid the altar made of cedar. Then Solomon overlaid the rest of the temple's interior with solid gold, and he made gold chains to protect the entrance to the most holy place. Park Enam in Leviticus 19:28. Oh, is that do not tattoo your skin? Oh, yeah, or cut your beard or eat pork and that. Yeah. So we finished overlaying the entire temple with gold, including the altar that belonged to the most holy place. He made 2 cherubim of wild olive wood, each 15 feet tall, and placed them in the inner sanctuary. The wingspan of each of the cherubim was 15 feet, each wing being 7.5 feet long. The 2 cherubim were identical in shape and size. Each was 15 feet tall. He placed them side by side in the inner sanctuary of the temple. Their outspread wings reached from wall to wall, while their inner wings touched at the center of the room. He overlaid the 2 cherubim with gold. This is moving architecture, isn't it? Did you know that Constantinople was built as a massive monument and to reflect the temple of heaven? So it'd have all this amazing architecture because they were trying to think, what would heaven on earth look like? So they built basically this throne room, and you had the Hagia Sophia there, and the priest would sit like Jesus would sit and just rule over that part of Turkey and the east, and the whole church on the eastern side. And like there would be people around him reflecting the apostles, and it's really moving stuff. And Christian architecture can be such an awesome testimony to the heavens above. And look at what they're doing here. It can also be a complete money swindling scam. Well, that's another story. Then he made 4-sided doorposts of wild olive wood for the entrance of the temple. There were 2 folding doors of cypress wood, and each door was hinged to fold back upon itself. These doors were decorated with carvings of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers, all overlaid evenly with gold. The walls of the inner courtyard were built so that there was 1 layer of cedar beams between every 3 layers of finished stone. The foundation of the Lord's temple was laid in mid-spring in the month of Ziv. During the 4th year of Solomon's reign, the entire building was completed in every detail by mid-autumn in the month of Bul, during the 11th year of his reign. So it took 7 years to build his temple. Fair play to Solomon. It took him longer to build his house than it did the temple. So he's trying to prioritize the work of the Lord. Sue Roberts. We had a scripture teacher in Cardiff High who told us that every time we squeezed a spot, we defiled the temple of the Lord our body. Imagine saying that to an adolescent, hormonal 15-year-old girl. Yeah. All right. I've never heard anything like that before. But at least someone in Cardiff High knew the scriptures. That's one thing. I'm not saying they knew how to apply the scriptures, but they knew the scriptures. Just on the Leviticus 19 tattoo stuff, as we've pretty much come to an end here, it's interesting that throughout the Mosaic law, cutting yourself or getting tattoos of like deathly things like skulls and things like that were forbade, because church are to be children of life. I don't think you can make a case today that all tattoos should be banned on the Christian. I think you can make a tattoo that Christians shouldn't be drawing attention to themselves sexually with tattoos to your average guy on the street. There's a lot about humility and sort of self-esteem and chastity and that. It's difficult to say that tattoos shouldn't be allowed today, but it is assert that we should not be celebrating things of death on our bodies. Because church is a place of life. Also, isn't it, in Revelation, Jesus on his thigh has holy tattooed on his thigh. Belter, that is. But anyway, all those rules were, they all had a purpose: to display life. Life. Yeah, also had all that deathly slavery stuff about it, and stuff we're just free from. I don't mean free to go and do what we like. I mean, we're not in death anymore, and we're not in bondage to Egypt. So let's celebrate life with architecture, art, family life, praise, worship, hobbies, eating to the glory of God, church fellowship, and let's all go to the Solomon wise anointed king who sits tonight on his throne. I'm clipping that for tomorrow's Facebook, because that was one of my... I was surprised as I reread that one how great that chapter was. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. We meet again at 6 p.m. tomorrow for Ruth chapter 2, and then again at 9 o'clock if you're up for it. Peace be upon you. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.